It is a great time to be a Super Nintendo fan because if you're a Switch Online member, you now have access to 20 Super Nintendo games through the Switch Online Super Nintendo Collection. You can play those games to your heart's content, and there are more coming in the future, we just don't know when. Also, not that long ago, Nintendo put out the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, which again includes a whole bunch of Super Nintendo games and some that aren't part of the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection. Hopefully they make their way over at some point, but we don't know if that's going to be the case. With that said, there are still a bunch of great Super Nintendo games that deserve some recognition, so I thought I would put together a list of 5 picks that I feel deserve a spot on the Super Nintendo collection for Switch Online. I'm not going to include games that are on the Super Nintendo Classic Edition because I feel that's a bit redundant, so let's look at some other titles. Here's my top 5 picks for Super Nintendo games I feel deserve to be on the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection, as well as one that I would personally love to see there but I think has no chance of showing up. The Legend of the Mystical Ninja is one of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time, and also one of my favorite games in general. Back in the day, this really was a great showcase for what the Super Nintendo could do. The visuals are sharp and clean, they're vibrant, and they're just really fun to look at. The audio is top-notch, there's some really great compositions in here, some awesome music in general. The game has local co-op, which just makes it that much more fun. It's a platforming adventure with all kinds of unique twists and turns. There's also stages in between where you go around through shops and talk to people and buy power-ups, and it's just a mix of really interesting ideas, and I think it deserves another chance to shine. It's been on Virtual Console services over the years, but I really think it deserves a spot on Switch Online's Super Nintendo collection. Also, Goemon is a Mii costume in Smash Bros. Ultimate. It was just added last week, so come on, now's the perfect time. If Sakurai is paying attention to the Mystical Ninja series, I think Switch Online Super Nintendo collection should too. Tetris Attack has to be one of the greatest puzzle games ever made. You might look at it now and think it's a match 3 puzzler, what's the big deal? And it's true, back in the day match 3 puzzlers weren't as prevalent as they are nowadays, but still, this one just feels so solid, and it feels so good when you're playing, and it moves really quickly. Even the computer puts up a really good challenge if you're playing against the game itself, but the real fun comes in when you grab a second player and go head to head, because it makes for some really intense battles. This is a puzzle game I could play for hours and hours on end and just still feel like doing one more game. On top of that, the game's soundtrack is one of the best on the Super Nintendo. It has such an amazing soundtrack from start to finish. Everything about this game is worth an addition to the Super Nintendo collection on Switch Online. The Switch Online Super Nintendo collection just doesn't feel right without Chrono Trigger, and this is coming from someone who really doesn't play too many RPGs. Chrono Trigger is one of the seminal moments in the video game industry. This is an RPG that still influences developers to this day, and it deserves to be played on every platform, Switch included. The more people that get a chance to play this game, the better. The storyline, the gameplay, the soundtrack, it's all so phenomenal. There's so much to talk about, but you don't want to spoil it for those who've never played, which is why it's perfect for the Switch Online. This should be on the service, it should have been there day one. Hopefully Square-Enix and Nintendo can work something out and bring this classic to the service soon. Who would be mad about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming to the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection? Everybody loves the Turtles. They really grew in popularity when I was a kid, but they've been around ever since. There's been multiple cartoons, numerous movies, there's been reboots, there's been comic series, there's comic spin-offs, there's a whole bunch going on for the brand, and that love continues today, so why not bring one of the classic Turtles games to the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time is a great adaptation of an arcade game from Konami, and this comes from an era where Konami was really killing it with their arcade titles and their beat-em-ups, and they did fantastic stuff with the Turtles license. So many great Turtles games, but I really think Turtles in Time is one of their best. It still looks good today. It's really visually pleasing. It just has a great overall color scheme and great animation. Plus, it's a fun beat-em-up from what used to be the kings of beat-em-ups. They really knew what they were doing. Grab a second player and it's just a blast to play. I know there was a 3D remake of this not too long ago, but it lost a lot of the charm of the Super Nintendo version, so why not give us the original just straightforward on the Super Nintendo Switch Online collection? You can't talk about Super Nintendo without mentioning Capcom because they put out a bunch of great games for the Super Nintendo, and one of those games is UN Squadron, which definitely deserves a spot in the Super Nintendo collection for Switch Online. There are a bunch of shoot-'em-ups on the Super Nintendo, but UN Squadron did some things differently. It gave you a ship that had a health meter so you could take multiple hits, whereas most shoot-'em-ups on Super Nintendo were one hit and done. You think this would make the game easier, but that really isn't the case because Capcom just throws that much more at you. The game is absolutely relentless, and it feels like you're never going to get through it at first, but that's what I think makes for a really fun shoot-'em-up. You also have 3 different pilots to pick from, and they have different ships, and the ships handle differently and shoot differently. Plus, you can level up your ship later on as you get more money. It's just a really great game with a lot of replay value, and it's really going to put your skills to the test. Those are my 5 picks for Super Nintendo games I feel deserve a spot on the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection, and I think they're all pretty likely minus the Turtles because there's, like I said, licensing issues there, but hopefully something can be worked out. Still, I have one more bonus game that's just a selfish pick for me that I don't think has any chance of ever coming over. I'd really like to be wrong about it, but it just doesn't seem to get much love. I've played a lot of puzzle platformers in my day, but nothing really stands up to The Lost Vikings. It's a 3-character puzzle platformer where each character has different abilities, and you have to control and utilize all their abilities to make it through a level, and the puzzles are ridiculously intricate, plus you fight enemies along the way too. This game was made by Silicon and Synapse, which is actually Blizzard now, and it was published by Interplay. I had a chance to talk to someone at Blizzard about my love for The Lost Vikings, and I was saying, please bring it back in some way, even if it's just the original. And they were like, man, so nice to hear from a Lost Vikings fan. We'll bring that feedback back to the company. Nothing's ever going to happen with it, but maybe if I cross all my fingers and toes, we can see this on the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection. Well, there you go, my top 5 picks for Super Nintendo games that I feel deserve to be in the Switch Online Super Nintendo collection, and one bonus pick that has no chance in hell, but I would really like to see it happen. I'm sure you guys have some suggestions or some feedback on what I've talked about, so hit me up in the comments below and share your game suggestions, or tell me why I'm wrong. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting, it's very much appreciated. Also, a huge thank you to our Patreon gang for supporting me over there. You guys doing what you do there allows me to do what I do. Videos like this, GoNintendo.com, the Twitter, the Facebook, the podcast, all of it. Thank you so much, your support is greatly humbling. If you'd like to learn more about the Patreon, you can check out the description below. As for today, that's it. I'll be back tomorrow with some sort of video, so until then, have a lovely day and a lovely evening, and I'll see you in a few short hours.